When I speak, I do not come as a gentle guide reciting soft truths. I come as one who has gazed into the abyss and returned with scars that speak louder than theory. This is not a reassurance, but a final warning. Your gift of feeling is not what you think it is. You who call yourself an empath believe your compassion is a pure light. Yet at its root lies a scar carved in the fires of childhood, when survival demanded you learn to read the shifting moods of others as if your life depended on it. The infant left unheard, the child navigating storms of volatility, became attuned not out of choice but out of necessity. That wound, that scar, became your compass, and though it once saved you, it also blurred your boundaries, dissolving your sense of self into the needs of everyone else. Empathy, then, is not simply virtue. It is adaptation, born of wounds. This is where your story begins, not with a saintly gift, but with pain transmuted into sensitivity. Yet here lies the paradox. What once bound you to suffering can become the very source of strength. For when the empath recognizes that their feeling nature is not weakness, but survival wisdom, they begin the path of reclaiming power. What the world calls your compassion is in truth your scar, a reminder of battles endured and overcome. And scars, when honored, are not deformities, but badges of resilience. Consider how easily this scar has drawn you into the orbit of narcissists. Their hunger for mirrors finds in you a perfect match, someone ready to dissolve, to reflect, to absorb. But you must understand, the very qualities that once made you prey can also be transfigured into the qualities that make you untouchable. This is the arc we follow, from the scar of empathy to the sovereignty of the healed self. Yet before that transformation comes, you must confront the raw fact of where it began. The ache in your childhood is not a curse to hide from, nor is it a virtue to polish. It is your survival blueprint, and until you claim it consciously, others will exploit it unconsciously. So I say to you, your empathy is not innocence. It is a scar etched by survival. This scar can either chain you to endless sacrifice or open the path to liberation. The choice depends on whether you dare to see it for what it is, neither curse nor gift, but the seed of transformation. As we move forward, we will descend deeper into what lies beneath. The shadows you have avoided, the hunger you deny, and the instinct that waits for recognition. It is there, in the descent, that your scar will become strength, and your empathy will turn from prey into power. To descend into your own psyche is to step willingly into the underworld, a place where archetypes burn with fierce fire and illusions dissolve. Many empaths resist this descent, fearing that if they look too closely at their own inner landscape, they will discover darkness they cannot bear. Yet the truth is unavoidable. Within you lives rage, hunger, and the instinct you have long denied. You have believed yourself to be only light, endlessly patient, endlessly forgiving, endlessly available. But what you call light has been a mask. Beneath it smolders fire, the very fire you must integrate if you are to rise as whole. In Jungian terms, this descent is the encounter with the shadow, the anima, the animus, those buried parts of self you have projected outward because you feared to claim them within. Every empath knows the pull, to see in others what is disowned in oneself, to worship or to rescue, to project strength or completion onto the narcissist who feeds upon that unconscious longing. But when you gather your courage and turn inward, you begin to face these archetypal forces as your own. The rage you once disowned becomes fuel for boundaries. The hunger for validation, when acknowledged, loses its grip. The manipulative tendencies you denied reveal themselves not to shame you, but to remind you. You are human, not angel, and humanity is wholeness, not purity. This descent is not punishment, but initiation. To meet your shadow is to meet the mirror of your unacknowledged truth. It whispers to you, you are not only healer, you are also wounded. You are not only compassionate, you are also fierce. You are not only giver, you are also capable of demanding. To refuse this truth is to remain fragmented. To embrace it is to step into a deeper power. Myth and dream often serve as guides through this terrain. Imagine walking through a vast cathedral of mirrors, each shattered, each reflecting a distorted face of those you once loved. You bleed as you try to gather the pieces, desperate to repair what never belonged to you. Then a voice reminds you, these fragments are not yours to hold. You look up and see a mirror unbroken, and in it, for the first time, your own face. This is the lesson of descent. The shadow, when acknowledged, becomes a guide back to yourself. Do not mistake this for sentimentality. The narcissist thrives only while you remain unconscious of these depths. They fear not the empath who endlessly bleeds for them, but the one who has walked into the underworld, faced their demons, and returned unafraid. Such an empath no longer bends under exploitation. They carry instead the quiet sovereignty of one who has seen themselves whole, shadow and light embraced together. So you must walk where you least wish to go, into the caves of resentment, the forests of fear, the deserts of loneliness. There you will meet the parts of yourself you once abandoned to others. There you will learn that integration is not about perfection, but about courage. When you emerge, you will no longer beg for acceptance, nor collapse under manipulation. You will radiate the wholeness that makes the narcissist tremble. And as we move forward, we will see how those who refuse this descent remain trapped in the cycle of martyrdom, sacrificing endlessly, yet never receiving love. The empath who refuses descent remains caught in a cruel cycle. This is the cycle of martyrdom, where the wound of childhood is replayed through every adult relationship, binding you to the unconscious bargain. I will suffer if only I can be loved. That vow, though never spoken aloud, shapes every act of sacrifice. You overgive, overlisten, overforgive, not because you are endlessly noble, but because deep within there is still a child who believes pain is the price of belonging. The narcissist recognizes this bargain instantly. It is their native tongue. They thrive on the unconsciousness of others, feeding on your willingness to empty yourself for the faint hope of approval. They offer crumbs of affection, moments of validation, always just enough to keep the cycle alive. Meanwhile, you tell yourself that endurance is virtue, that patience will one day redeem them, that your compassion will transform cruelty into love. But this is not compassion. It is entrapment, and every act of martyrdom deepens the wound you are secretly trying to escape. There is a dangerous shadow hidden in this pattern. Many empaths cling to suffering because it gives them a sense of meaning. To be needed becomes proof of worth. To endure becomes proof of strength. But in truth, this is addiction masquerading as love. The empath is addicted to being indispensable, addicted to the role of healer, addicted to the illusion of control that comes from giving endlessly. It feels noble, but beneath it lies fear. Fear of confrontation, fear of loneliness, fear of claiming one's own desires. Let us speak plainly. Endless sacrifice does not lead to love. It leads to depletion. The narcissist does not transform, they consume. And the empath, unhealed, becomes complicit in their own erosion. This is why healing is not optional. To remain unhealed is to be bound forever in this dance of shadow, where one feeds and the other bleeds. Dreams often dramatize this cycle. Imagine again the cathedral filled with broken mirrors. Each shard you lift cuts your hand. Each face you see is another promise broken, another hope betrayed. You bleed endlessly, trying to restore fragments that are not yours to repair. This is the image of martyrdom, giving your blood to restore illusions that can never be whole. The voice that calls from above, "The mirrors are not yours to repair," is the voice of liberation. To heed it is to step out of the cycle. To ignore it is to bleed forever. But how do you break free? The first step is radical honesty. Ask yourself, am I giving because I choose to, or because I fear what will happen if I stop? Am I sacrificing out of love, or out of the hunger to be indispensable? These questions cut deep, but they burn away illusion. The moment you see that much of your goodness has been fear in disguise, the chains begin to loosen. Understand this clearly. The narcissist's greatest weapon is not their cruelty, but your unconsciousness. They cannot manipulate what you have already owned within yourself. Once you admit your shadow motives, the hooks of exploitation fall away. The narcissist loses power because there is no bargain left to exploit. The martyr dies, and in its place rises the sovereign self. Yet this transformation is not instant. The temptation to return to martyrdom will whisper to you again and again. Old wounds will call you back, promising safety in familiar suffering. But each time you choose wholeness over sacrifice, you weaken the old pattern. Each time you refuse to kneel, you reclaim your life. So remember, suffering is not proof of love. Bleeding endlessly will not bring redemption. To awaken is to see the cycle for what it is, a pact with emptiness. To break it is to step into freedom. And as we continue, we will turn to the realm of dreams, where the unconscious offers symbols and stories that reveal what waking life conceals, guiding you toward liberation. The unconscious often speaks in dreams when waking life cannot bear the truth. For the empath trapped in cycles of martyrdom, the dream world becomes a theater where wounds and possibilities are staged with haunting clarity. One such vision is the vast cathedral filled with broken mirrors. Each fragment reflects the face of a past lover or betrayer, each shard cutting your hands as you try to piece together what was shattered. The blood represents your endless sacrifice, the belief that if you can only mend what is broken in others, you will finally be whole yourself. But the revelation comes when a voice interrupts. The mirrors are not yours to repair. In that instant, the dream shows the futility of trying to assemble the broken reflections of others. Healing begins not with fixing them, but with beholding your own face in the one unbroken mirror at the altar. Another dream rises from the wilderness of instinct, the image of a magnificent wolf caught in a trap. You approach with compassion, desperate to rescue. Yet as you draw near, the wolf turns and bites your hand to the bone. You flee, terrified, pursued by more wolves circling in the shadows. The wolf is not merely your partner, not merely the narcissist. It is your own instinct, long suppressed. You have tried to tame it, to moralize it, to bend it to your vision of endless gentleness. But instinct cannot be tamed by denial. If you refuse it, it turns against you. If you integrate it, it becomes your ally. The dream insists, empathy without instinct is weakness. Empathy with instinct is power. And then there is the faceless man standing before a massive door carved with ancient symbols. He demands that you kneel if you wish to pass, his towering figure a reflection of every narcissist who has demanded submission. Terrified, you nearly surrender until something rises within. You stand tall and declare, "I will not kneel. The treasure is mine by right." The faceless man dissolves into smoke, and the door opens onto blazing light. Here the dream reveals its truth. The narcissist, external and internal, is but a gatekeeper of your own power. Refuse to kneel, and you reclaim yourself. These parables are not random phantoms. They are archetypal dramas staged by the unconscious to expose the truth you avoid in waking life. Each broken mirror, wolf, or faceless guardian is a piece of your psyche calling you to integration. When you ignore them, you remain chained to illusion. When you heed them, you discover the path toward wholeness. The narcissist fears nothing more than this awakening, for their power survives only where unconscious bargains remain unbroken. The moment you stop repairing others, reclaim instinct, and refuse to kneel, you become a presence they cannot control. You are no longer a pliable mirror, but a sovereign soul. Dreams are not meant to console you with fantasy. They are meant to disturb you into truth. They show, with imagery sharper than words, what you must confront to awaken. And as you bring these visions into consciousness, you carry them back into waking life as weapons of clarity. The broken mirrors teach you to stop bleeding for illusions. The wolf teaches you to reclaim instinct. The faceless man teaches you to refuse submission. Together, they form a map. See your wholeness. Embrace your instinct. Stand in your sovereignty. In this way, the dream world does not separate you from reality, but equips you to face it. For when you awaken with these lessons, you no longer walk blindly into the snares of narcissists. You no longer bleed for their brokenness, nor kneel before their masks. You walk instead with the authority of one who knows their inner symbols, one who listens to the language of the unconscious and acts upon it. This is why dreams matter. They are not escape, but initiation. And as we move forward, we will see how the lessons of instinct and sovereignty translate into the everyday necessity of boundaries, where your no becomes as natural and sacred as your yes. Boundaries are not walls you erect to keep the world away. They are the natural expressions of your essence. Just as a tree does not apologize for its bark or explain why it must remain rooted, so too must your boundaries exist without justification. For the unhealed empath, however, saying no feels like betrayal, a betrayal of love, of duty, of the identity built on self-sacrifice. This is why so many remain pliable, bending under manipulation, unable to stand in their own ground. Yet it is precisely this pliability that the narcissist requires to survive. Where there is no firm root, manipulation thrives. Where there is sovereignty, their strategy collapses. The narcissist does not fear your tenderness. They fear your clarity. They fear the moment when your compassion ceases to be entangled with self-abandonment. They fear the empath who can say yes with warmth and no with equal power, who listens without dissolving, who loves without being consumed. For such an empath is no longer prey, but fortress, radiating a sovereignty that cannot be breached. Understand this. Your no is not cruelty. It is alignment. It is not rejection of others, but affirmation of self. When your boundaries are rooted in essence, they do not arise from anger or revenge, but from necessity. A river must remain within its banks to flow with strength. A flame must remain within its hearth to warm without destruction. So too must you contain your energy within the limits that preserve your wholeness. The archetypes confirm this truth. The warrior within you joins the healer, creating a fierce compassion that protects as well as nurtures. The mystic within you knows that love without boundaries is not love but bondage. The sovereign within you insists that to honor yourself is to honor the life given to you. When these archetypal voices unite, your presence becomes unassailable. Consider how the narcissist reacts when faced with such boundaries. They rage, they accuse, they seduce, they plead. They may call you selfish, cold, unloving. But these reactions are the flailing of a strategy collapsing under its own emptiness. They cannot dominate where pliability is absent. They cannot feed where there is no offering. In your no, they encounter the mirror of their own lack, the void they have avoided by consuming others. And it is this void they most fear. To sustain these boundaries, you must draw upon instinct. Remember the wolf of your dream, once feared, now reclaimed. Instinct teaches you to discern, to step back when danger circles, to protect your essence without apology. Empathy united with instinct becomes vision, the capacity to feel deeply without drowning, to perceive the soul of a room without being dominated by it. This union is power, and power terrifies the narcissist. Do not confuse this with hatred. Hatred binds you just as surely as surrender. True liberation comes not from animosity, but from indifference born of clarity. You see the narcissist, you understand them, but you do not orbit them. Your life no longer revolves around their approval or rejection. You are free. This is what boundaries mean. Not withdrawal from love, but entrance into authentic love. Love that does not enslave. Love that does not devour. Love that liberates both giver and receiver. Such boundaries signal the end of martyrdom and the birth of sovereignty. And so we move toward the final stage, wholeness. For boundaries are not the end of the journey, but the foundation upon which individuation unfolds. The empath who has claimed their no becomes more than survivor. They become a cultural force, radiating authenticity in a world addicted to masks. To this we now turn, the collective impact of healing and the archetypal return that transforms not only the individual but the age itself. To speak of wholeness is to speak of individuation, the lifelong process Jung described as the integration of shadow and light, anima and animus, instinct and compassion. For the empath, wholeness is the culmination of a journey that begins in childhood wounds and ends in sovereignty. You no longer define yourself by the hunger of others. You no longer measure your worth by your willingness to bleed. Instead, you embody a presence that cannot be consumed, a mirror that cannot be distorted, a soul that radiates from its own center. This transformation terrifies the narcissist. Their power depends on your unconsciousness, on your willingness to project, to kneel, to sacrifice. But when you withdraw those projections and reclaim the fragments of yourself, their mask begins to crumble. They stand revealed as hollow, their grandeur exposed as camouflage for an inner exile. You, meanwhile, become proof that healing is possible, that the mask is unnecessary, that wholeness waits for all who dare to descend into the unconscious and return. Yet the impact does not end with you. Every empath who heals contributes to the healing of the collective psyche. Narcissism is not only an individual affliction, it is a cultural epidemic. We live in an age addicted to image over essence, spectacle over substance, consumption over creation. In such a culture, unhealed empaths become fuel, pouring themselves out for systems that celebrate their sacrifice while quietly devouring their spirit. But the healed empath refuses this role. They withdraw their energy from the machinery of exploitation. They radiate authenticity in a world of masks, and in doing so, they threaten to unravel the very spell that binds the masses. This is why your healing matters beyond your personal life. Each time you set a boundary, you challenge cultural narcissism. Each time you reclaim a projection, you weaken the machinery of illusion. Each time you choose wholeness over sacrifice, you become a revolutionary presence. Those who live in deception may recoil from you, sensing that their masks cannot survive your gaze. But those who long for truth will be drawn to you, not because you endlessly give, but because you embody what they secretly yearn for. Authenticity, sovereignty, freedom. The myths remind us that this journey is archetypal. Orpheus descended into the underworld. Persephone emerged as queen of both worlds. Christ descended into hell before rising again. These stories are not distant legends. They are mirrors of your path. You, too, have descended into the abyss of toxic entanglement, into the jaws of narcissism, into the silence of your own abandonment. But now you are called to return, carrying within you the gold of individuation. The empath who heals becomes the archetype of the alchemist, the warrior, the mystic, not because they destroy, but because they awaken. Wholeness is not invulnerability. You will still feel, perhaps more deeply than ever, but you will no longer drown. You will still love, but your love will not enslave. You will still encounter shadows, but you will not mistake them for your own. In this freedom, you discover something greater than survival: creation. The healed empath does not merely protect themselves. They write, build, teach, parent, create communities. Their energy is no longer siphoned away by narcissists. It is directed toward shaping a world more aligned with the self. This is the ultimate gift. And the final warning. If you do not heal, you will be consumed, applauded for your virtue even as your spirit fades. But if you heal, you become a force the culture cannot fully tolerate, too sovereign to be manipulated, too awake to be seduced, too whole to be consumed. You become, in a word, dangerous, not because you destroy, but because you reveal. And in your revelation, you liberate not only yourself, but all who witness your light. And so we arrive at the threshold of ending, which is also beginning. The empath who heals becomes not merely the narcissist's greatest fear, but humanity's greatest hope. In the final pages of this journey, the warning will become a commissioning, a torch passed into your hands. Rise, remember, reclaim. The words you have heard are not only a warning, they are a summons. To be an empath is no longer to identify as the one who bleeds for others. It is to step into the lineage of those who have walked through fire and returned bearing light. The empath who heals becomes something archetypal, a force that unsettles illusions, a mirror that refuses distortion, a presence that alters every room it enters. This is not sentimentality. This is transformation. You are called to recognize that what once felt like weakness was in truth survival wisdom. The scar of empathy, carved in childhood, was never meant to keep you chained to suffering. It was meant to awaken discernment. Every boundary you set, every projection you reclaim, every instinct you honor becomes a declaration. I am whole. I will not kneel. I carry my own light. Understand that this work is urgent. Jung called individuation the path of liberation, not comfort. The time is short, and the world hungers for presences who cannot be manipulated by spectacle, who cannot be consumed by endless demands. Each day you remain unconscious. The machinery of narcissism, personal and collective, thrives. Each day you reclaim yourself. its dominion weakens. You are not merely healing for yourself. You are participating in the rebalancing of a culture adrift in shadows. Picture again the final image: a torch carried into darkness. It does not need to argue or plead. Its existence is enough to expose what is false. In your healing, you will terrify those who rely on masks, because your clarity reveals the emptiness behind their performance. But you will also awaken those starving for authenticity, those who sense in you the proof that sovereignty is possible. You become not rescuer, not martyr, but initiator of transformation. This is why the narcissist trembles. Not because you wield violence or hatred. Both of those would bind you again to their orbit. But because you no longer orbit at all. You are whole, radiant, self-rooted. Your love is fierce yet discerning. Your no is as natural as your yes. Your presence is as steady as the sun. Nothing they do can consume you because you have withdrawn every unconscious bargain. You stand, and in that standing, their strategy collapses. Let these words echo within you. Heal or be consumed. Awaken or kneel forever at doors that never open. The path before you is demanding, yes, but it is also liberating. The fire you fear does not destroy. It burns away illusion. What remains is not fragments, but wholeness. What emerges is not weakness, but power. So claim your right to exist. Step out of the orbit of those who feed on your light. Walk into the silence that once felt unbearable and discover that it is not death, but gestation. Rise carrying your torch, not to save the world through endless sacrifice, but to embody the truth that the world most needs. That healing is possible, that wholeness is real, that sovereignty is the birthright of every soul. The empath who heals is the narcissist's greatest fear and humanity's greatest hope.